everybody, welcome to my coloring channel. I'm doing another color along in Worlds Within Worlds, and this time I'm going to be trying to approach the hands over here. I'm not going to make it a full double spread today. I'm going to focus predominantly on this one, and what I'm imagining it to be is having a really nice sunset like orangey background. I'm actually going to put in a horizon line as well, and I'm planning on trying to draw, if I can, silhouettes of these hands holding these miniature forests down here on the horizon line, because then I could see a world where it's not only this, that if you're walking on the horizon line at the bottom, that there's actually tons of these hands just sticking out of the ground holding these things, because that to me justify why you would have something like this. And so that in my mind would mean that you have this world where the entire surface is covered with little hands holding things up, and maybe this is somewhere on one of the, I don't know, northern or southern spheres, because it's all frozen over. This would be maybe more in the tropic zone because it's more tropical. That's just, I don't know, where my imagination took me when I was thinking about these photos. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the video. I'm beginning with a base of Neocolor 2s, and the colors that I'm using are scarlet, vermilion, orange, yellow, and white. And I'm going from a gradient with red at the top down towards white at the bottom. The reason I'm using Neocolor 2 here are because I wanted to have a water base medium that lays down rich pigment. And I saw on some other coloring channels that if you do this, if you use chalk pastels on top of it, it can create a really nice effect. And there's something about having a water-based medium on the page that first kills the tooth of the paper, which makes it a bit more receptive to having chalk pastels on top. So I'm coloring in also with the little gaps here. I'm coloring it in a bit rushed. It doesn't really matter because when you activate it, all of the different scratch marks you have go away. Since Neocolor 2s are so soft, they don't really make an indent or a mark on the paper. So I'm only coloring it to a certain extent. I'm not really leaving color towards the bottom, and again, that's because I'm trying to create that horizon line. So the water brush pen that I'm using here, I'm just kind of, again, roughly going over it, starting from the darks, coming down towards the lights. Some people prefer to go from the lights to the darks to try to get a more even tone, but I'm just experimenting at this point, and so I'm not really aiming for anything that's particularly even, since I know I'll be covering it up later. And then this is where, with my experimentations, I decided I wanted it to be even darker, and so I added in a purple at the top to try to get that depth of color a bit deeper. And here at the bottom, I'm trying to draw in on the horizon my little trees, but since I can't draw, they mostly look like little blobs, and I'm using a pencil brush pen to get the dark in so that the horizon at the bottom can kind of be more of a silhouette kind of a vibe. It doesn't really look like much at the moment, but the concept is there, the idea is there. And so now I'm coming in with my layer of chalk pastels, and I'm doing it a bit rough because, again, you kind of blend it out being chalk. I tried using one of those makeup sponges, I hated it, and just went straight in with my fingers after that. It's a bit of a messy process, but I think the oil on your fingers helps the chalk stick to it a bit more, and it makes it a bit of a smoother blend. The purple at the top was being a tiny bit weird though, even though the rest kind of came in. And so I'm trying to get more texture, adding in whites to maybe make a cloud. It mostly looked like a white line at that point, so I was like, why not wispy line clouds? And yeah, I had to wet that cloth so that it can clean my hands a bit more, since I didn't want the red to interfere and muddy the yellow and the whites that I had towards the bottom. And yeah, so the paler colors blended a bit better than the darker colors. The purple was kind of throwing me off a tiny bit. Then I figured I could try to make it darker, a bit more textured, see if I can make it look a bit cloudy. I hated the clouds, I took them out. So it's just a lot of back and forth and experimenting with this piece, and don't necessarily feel like I achieved my desired effect, but it is a very good learning process over here to kind of figure out how to use some of these techniques. And yeah, I accidentally got some red in that yellow area, but it was really easy to wipe out. So now I'm trying to see if I can get a bit more clouds in somehow. So try to do more of those lines with purples and then with whites. I didn't really like it, so then I blended it out, and then I thought maybe I could use an eraser to make my clouds. But again, I just had the same issue. It's probably the shape of my clouds, so I hated it and then colored that in. So instead over here, I'm just using my electric eraser to clean up some of the leaves and take some of that sky color off to let the greens come through. So I'm starting with the hand, and I want it to look like stone, so I'm actually making it gray, so it has a bit of a granite vibe to it, and I'm putting down an initial layer of the Derwent Intense Stardust here. And so on top of that I put leaf green because I wanted it to look like granite that was overgrown with lichen, because sometimes granite can really look greeny. I also threw in asphalt at one point and charcoal gray at another point to kind of up some of those shadows. So I wasn't really sure what it was going to look like at this point, but I was willing to experiment, and that's kind of what this whole page was about, is to break out of my comfort zone of what I know works and try to discover something new to see if I can get something else to work. So when I was adding water, I started with a nail, and it turned into this really gruesome gray green, and it kind of looks like the nail is a dead nail, but I'm still digging it. Like it's getting a bit of a stone effect. And so it ended up being this really cool hand that had way more green that was prominent than I was expecting. When you first laid down that color, it just did not pop like that, but I didn't mind it. It was getting there. So for the rest of these trees, I'm just alternating between several different kinds of browns with natural bark, and charcoal gray, trying to build up some depth and shadow, and coming in with the magic of the water to activate it and just really make it shine. And again, with Derwent Intense, I know a lot of times people want to come in with multiple layers, but I find that a single layer is often enough, especially when you have these smaller details. So those are the colors: mustard, fern, leaf green, and ionian green, and charcoal. And I just used those in random order for the rest of this page here to just kind of build up the colors and the layers. So I'm using some of that orangey color on top of the leaves because sometimes when the sunlight hits the green, it has an orange tint to it, and I was trying to make it look like it was luminous and orange since it was also a sunset scene, try to get that to match. I used the darker greens for the shadow areas, and Kerby Rosanes, being Kerby, his pages, you can easily see the shadow areas because of his line work. And then just colored it in. So here's the montage for the rest of the jungle. The background was looking a bit empty to me, so I wanted to try clouds one more time, so I came in with a Pitt Artist brush pen. These things are very translucent, and that's why I'm trying to use it, so that the clouds kind of look a bit wispy, and I decided maybe mist was more what could work instead of like an actual cloud. And so I decided to put this around the jungle to have it feel like it was a jungle with mist clinging to the tops of the trees and branching out. And so I decided that this time, instead of just having them in the background, they'd actually be in the foreground and cover some of my trees. And so it's okay. I left the effect as is. It wasn't my favorite by any means, but it was okay. I used the storm tusk to create some shadow, and I blended it with that brush pen itself, and that seems to work as a liquid agent to add those shadows in. Still wasn't that happy with the background, and I thought maybe it needed more orange and less yellow, so I decided to use my Prismacolors on top of this, and I do not recommend putting Prismacolors on top of paper that has had that chalk on it. I could not blend it out, and it ended up being more textured, but I just kept pushing the pencil as much as I could, trying to blend out as much as I could, even though now at this point it had more of those streaking effects I was trying to avoid at the start. But you know, at the end of the day, it's an experimental page, and it ended up still being beautiful. So thank you very much for watching me explore some techniques with Worlds Within Worlds. Have a good day.